All right, next up we've got Varomix from Mix Training. Hey, Varomix.
Hello.
So let's start with a little background on yourself.
All right. Well, I started using Houdini way back when the first Apprentice version was released, and I was checking this morning. It was 2002. Man, that's been a long time. That's when I started learning Houdini. That's when I found it really, basically. That's, I guess, a few months before that I found about Houdini. I didn't know about Houdini before. So some effects on X-Men, and I wanted to see how they were done, and they mentioned Houdini in a magazine, I think. And I was like, what is this Houdini thing? And then the Apprentice came by, and that I grabbed it, downloaded the 2 CDs. There were 2 CDs for it. One with the application, one with tutorials, and then just learned as much as possible from there, and keep learning today, actually.
And now you're helping other people learn as well.
Yes, it's something that I always wanted to do as well. Just I learned from a lot of people in the community. A lot of great people helped me along the way, making tutorials, responding to questions or whatever on the forums. So I always wanted to give away as well something, contribute some part of it. Also spreading the word about Houdini, because when I used Houdini, I felt like it was the best application ever, because it just fits me so well the way it works. So I want to spread the word. I started doing tutorials 11 years ago, I think. So it was a long time ago. So yeah, giving back to the community, it's always great. And it's always great when you see people send you a message or whatever, and saying like, thank you because you helped me with this, or sharing your tutorials and stuff. That's always great. Yeah.
So what's your presentation going to be on today?
It's going to be about getting started with Arnold in the Solaris context. It is surprisingly right now really simple to just get started with it. If you already are using Arnold, it's just a few things that you need to know. It's going to be covering the basics exactly about that, setting up Arnold, how do you get it stuff into Solaris, how do you use it, how do you set the shaders and all that stuff. So you can just from there just do your magic.
Right on. Well, let's jump in. Looking forward to it.
All right.
Hello everyone, welcome to my talk. This is Varomix from Mix Training, and today we're going to be talking about look who's back, Arnold for Solaris. Yes, it's going to be full of bad jokes. Alright, so in this talk, we're going to be taking a look at how to get started using Solaris in conjunction with Arnold. This is going to be mainly for people that are a little bit familiar with both Houdini and Arnold. It's really simple to get started. Getting into Solaris takes a little bit of there's some things that you have to learn, but I'm gonna show you what is the things that you need to know just to get started and get you going in Solaris. We're not gonna go in depth, really in depth into Solaris. I really recommend you watch any of the other presentations for that, or read the Houdini documentation, which is amazing for it. But we're going to talk a little bit about Solaris and USD, because I don't want this talk to be, I want this talk to be a standalone by itself as well. So what we're going to be ending with, by the time you finish watching this presentation, which is going to be a little bit in the workshop kind of style, I encourage you guys to follow along with me. This scene was, some of the elements are shaded with the Arnold system, or some Arnold shaders, and some of them are just USD assets that I took from the Houdini content for just populating the scene a little bit more. You can see there's a lot of things happening. You can see in the tent, you can see there is subsurface scattering. You can see the light going through the fabric there. There is also subsurface scattering on the character there. And Arnold just gives us this really amazing look really fast. And Arnold, one of the best things about Arnold is that it's super mega simple to use. It's really simplified and gets you going really fast. All right, you can see I have the scene right here in Houdini. This is the actual Houdini scene. You can see Arnold is on the viewport here rendering right now. Well, it's done rendering for now. And this is the stage that you're gonna be ending with this presentation. You can see there's not really that much stuff and could be simplified a lot, but I just structure it like this for learning purposes. Again, you can just do it in a different ways with USD, which is what the backbone of this is. This is also the scene graph here. You can see all your kind of the graph of the scene that it's composing all this image right here. So you can see this is the live Arnold viewport here, and we're gonna learn about how do we do this, how do we get this thing here, how do we structure everything here. It's gonna be, I'm gonna explain as much as I can here. So you can see there's some of the objects here, some of the shaders. So yeah, it's gonna be simple stuff. I'm gonna explain how to shade a few of these things, and I'm gonna just let you finish the rest, because practice makes perfect, of course. All right, so yeah, this hopefully you are excited about this. I really enjoy doing this, and let's start with the first part of this. So come with me if you wanna learn. All right, so the first thing we're gonna do before we start doing stuff in Houdini, we need the assets, because Solaris, it's basically it's gonna consume assets, be it that they are done in Houdini or externally. We need the assets. In this case, we're not gonna be building any assets. We're gonna use some assets from side effects. So this will be the way you will work in a studio or something like that. You just will have the assets, and you just import them. Or if you're doing the assets in Houdini, it's gonna be the same thing. So go to sideeffects.com and go here to the Get menu, Content Library. You will open this page, and here you will there's a lot of amazing content that it's provided here. You can search here in this all types menu, just filter by Solaris USD, and then you have these three elements here. It might be more by the time you see this. I'm gonna use this market scene. If you click on it, you're gonna open this page. Download this. It's a little big. It's 130 megabytes, not big for production, but it's a little big. There's a lot of really fun assets to play with, and it's also the same assets that are used on the loop tutorials, where are actually mentioned here, which starts me with the first thing. Solaris is the fancy name, I guess. It's the context they created, and loops is basically let's call it the internal name. Loops is the lighting operators, I guess. Not sure if layout or lighting operators, I guess layout. That is, if you see me or in Houdini, there is these two things that are called, you can see there's Solaris sometimes, there's loops sometimes. So just make sure that if you see somebody saying Solaris or loops, you know there is the same thing. USD is the other thing, and USD is something that you will need to learn to get into Solaris, because it uses USD completely. So you can see in the documentation for Houdini, there are a lot of good resources for this. This page is really great. You should totally read it. It's a little bit long. Don't be scared by the code here. I mean, OpenUSD is a framework that the Pixar developed and then later made available for everyone else. Well, made it open source. And then now it's becoming the standard on pipeline. But you can see that this documentation, it's a little bit extensive. There is more as well in the Pixar site. But we're gonna touch just on the basics so you can get you started, and don't be scared by the amount of stuff there is here. I'm gonna show you the basics to get you started, and of course you're gonna be learning as you use it. You're gonna be learning more on USD and Solaris. So don't get scared about this. It's not that hard, but I would mention that it is kind of like learning a new application. There's a lot of new concepts. There's a lot of new things in the Solaris context. So you will have to get used to a new set of things that are basically completely new. So once you have your assets ready, I have a fresh scene here of Houdini, and you will see that my layout is not the default, but that's not nothing to be concerned about. You can create this layout very simply. I just have mine here, as all of these layouts are created by default with Houdini or come included with Houdini. I have mine here. I have another one for LOPS. But you can create your layout as much as you customize your layout as much as you want. I like this format. I also have a stage or the stage content or Solaris here in a tab, because I like to just tab to it instead of creating a new context. You can create it that way if you feel like that, but I like it I like to work this way. All right, so I'm actually going to switch to the context that I made. I mean, the desktop that I made for LOPS, which is this. It's basically similar to the one I had, but I have this scene graph here and this scene graph panels here at the bottom. So because this scene graph tree, you will need it, and you will be working a lot with it. So you need this. If you don't like this layout, you could just use the default that comes with Houdini, which is this Solaris desktop. I really don't like to work on nodes in this little square on the corner, so I just made mine this vertical strip here in the middle. However you work, you will need this access to this stage content and the scene graph tree at least. I have these other scene graph panels here, but you should maybe not worry about them for now if you're just starting with Solaris. All right, so the first thing we're gonna do is how do we import geometry, or how do we bring geometry from Houdini to stage. Also, if you don't want to create a stage tab here, a side tab, you can just switch it here. But I just wanna have like an object network here and another one on the side, because we're gonna be switching between the two. All right, so how do we do this? Well, we're gonna start just like we do in Houdini if we're gonna import anything. So let's just import a tent from the content. So I just created a full project, put the content on that folder, and I'm gonna be loading assets from there. So now I'm gonna just do the standard Houdini way loading assets. I'm gonna put a file node, and I'm gonna load the asset, and the asset is here in the LOPS demo files. So I'm just gonna get in there. There's all this stuff here. We're gonna go to base geometry, and you can see these are just BGO files. So I'm gonna grab this tent, right? So now you can see I just loaded this tent, and it's just there, and it's happy, and it has two primitive groups, and it has UVs, and it has a position attribute there. So you can see this is standard Houdini stuff. Let's just do an output node here, because we're gonna use this later. So let's just call this out tent. So how do we bring this geometry now to Solaris? So now here in the Solaris context, it's pretty simple to bring stuff. So bring geometry here, just create some geometry. Oh, before I forget, if you see me using this guy, this is just my tool. It's called tab 2. It's just a fancy tab menu that I created. You can get it on my website. But if you see me creating nodes with this, it's the same thing as creating nodes with tab, but it has some extra things. But yeah, just if you see me creating whatever here, if you see me say create this node, it will be just use tab if you don't have this. All right, so we're gonna use a node that is called sub import, and well, that tells us everything we need to know. It's gonna import from subs, which of course that's what we want, right? So this node, what we're gonna do is just bring geometry from subs. What we're gonna do is always just load as a reference. Don't worry about what a reference is right now, but most of the time we want to load everything in Solaris as a reference because it's more efficient. And then for the sub path, we're just gonna select the 10 that we created. I'm gonna select the output and click there, and voila, it is on Solaris now. You can see it is here. All right, now, so you notice that I mentioned nothing about installing Arnold. Well, if you have Arnold installed already in Houdini, you already have access to the Hydra delegate, which I will explain what the Hydra delegate is. And if you already have Arnold, like I already have it here, and I'm using Houdini 18.0.6 464, sorry, and Arnold, let's see what version this is. This is 5.2.1, okay, H2A 5.2.1. So if you already have Arnold installed in Houdini, you already have access to this. You don't need to do anything. There was an extra step before, but now it's just nothing. You just need to run whatever installer you have for your system, Windows, Mac, or Linux. Just run it. It will set up your environment variable for you, and that's all you need. And if you want to know what that is this is my my Houdini.env file, which is this line right here is the thing that you need there. But this is made by default, I mean automatically by the installer does this, so you don't have to even do it. Just if you had Houdini open, just close it, open it again, and then you will have Arnold, and that's all you need to do basically, because the solid angle guys just made everything, put everything into just the same path, and you don't need to do anything else right now, which is really great. All right, so now what is this Hydra thing? Well, Hydra is an interface, so it's not a display interface, not a graphical interface. Is basically let's call it a bridge between geometry, or between applications and renderers. Okay, so if you think about how the application talks to a renderer, basically it needs to say, okay, well, I need all these shaders and geometry. I'm gonna send it to you, and then you will display do your things in renderland, and then give me an image. So this step that happens between the application and the renderer, there is now this concept in USD, or this interface that is called Hydra. And Hydra, it's been now like a universal way to talk between applications and renderers, which is great because let's say I'm a render developer. I only have to, if I make a Hydra delegate for my renderer, it will work in whatever application that supports Hydra. So if I connect it to Maya, Houdini, whatever other applications that support USD, they would know how to talk to it, because we already have this translator or this bridge that is universal between applications. So that is pretty amazing. So whatever you hear the word delegate is basically just this. Arnold will have a delegate, which is the implementation, the Arnold implementation for Hydra. Like Houdini has the Karma delegate, which is basically a version of Karma that talks to USD, right? So that's it. If Redshift has a delegate, Octane has a delegate, Renderman has a delegate. So they basically, delegate basically means an implementation that would talk to or we understand stuff that Hydra says to them, right? So that's basically what Hydra is. And where do we find this Hydra thing or these delegates? Well, they are here in the viewport here So if you select this perspective drop down, you can see there are different delegates here. Even this Houdini GL is a delegate for Hydra. Karma, which is the side effects and new renderer. Storm, it's a kind of like an example of Hydra renderer, I think, that is just for you to know how to implement the renderer. Arnold, which is the one that we're interested in right now in Redshift here, that we are actually, it's actually not loaded. I'm not sure why it's showing there. So if we switch to Arnold here, just choose that one, you can see now this already kicked Arnold, and it's rendered now in the viewport. You can see now here it's actually rendered with global illumination as Arnold does it always. So you can see this is, we are already using Solaris and Arnold together. So I guess we're done. Now, of course, we're not done. All right, so now how do we do things here? So you can see, let me switch back to the Houdini GL. You can see this object here now appears here in the scene graph here. So you can see the scene graph has this sub import and some mesh here. So this is basically the components or the elements that are building this graph now in USD. So this is a component. You can see the type is over here, component, and this is a mesh which doesn't have a kind because it's just a mesh. You can add a kind, but again, don't get really we're not going to get really in depth into this right now, but we're going to rename this to tent, and then now you can see it's tent here as well. So it's getting the name from the title here of the node and passing it here to the primitive path, which is this primitive path is important. It's where it's going to be placed in the graph. Basically, it's building kind of like a folder system, just like Houdini, and it's kind of organizing your scene here. So what I'm going to do here is going to organize this into a geom folder or geom structure here. So this is going to be the parent for all the geometry, and geom is kind of the default or the standard that USD calls like the geometry context, let's call it, right? So I've just added here geom, so I can just put that tent inside this little parent folder, okay? Parent group in this case. All right, so now what's next is how do we add shaders to this, right? Because we want to add shaders to this. But before we do that, we need to prepare this geometry, because here in Solaris, you can't really select like faces and points and modify them. You can select components and stuff, but not specifically just the faces and things like that. So what we're going to do instead, you can see this is several meshes here into one thing. So we're going to go back into object level or geometry level. And you can see this, if we middle click here, you can see this has two primitive groups, which is the sports and the tent. And if we press S and 9 here, you can see we have two groups here, and it's the tent and the supports there. All right. So what we're going to do is make those two groups into properties, just make it into properties, a name property, so we can access those in Solaris. We can even see here that we have the scene graph tree here, and you can see this update as we work on it. So one way to do this will be to just say, let's create an attribute. I'll show you the slow way first. So let's go create an attribute. The attribute has to be name. We want to create a name attribute. Solaris specs a name attribute. So this is going to be a primitive attribute, and there is going to be a type string, and we can call this whatever we want. Let's select the supports, and there we go. This is going to be the supports. I'm just adding to the group supports. I'm just adding the name supports, and you can see already there is this supports here in the scene graph. So that's how we're going to be able to apply shaders to this section in Solaris. So this is the way to do this. If you have, let's say, one group, actually I would do this, even the next method I would do it however number of groups you have. So instead of doing this for one group and then do it for the other, let's just be a little bit more clever and just use the name. There's a name from groups sub here, and this guy, you can see this is gonna create names from the groups, but it's gonna say a name from group, and it's trying to group by piece. We don't want to do that. We're just gonna put an asterisk there, so it means just name me all the groups, just give them a name. And what happens is, you can see here on this side, you can see it just gives the whatever primitive groups we have, just gives them a name. And that's exactly what we need. All right, so that part is basically done. So now we can go back to Stage or Solaris, and you can see now here we have the supports and the tenth part, which is the fabric, and we can see you can select them here right now. So now what we need to assign shaders to this, we need a material library. And the material library is basically, it's exactly the same as when you are working in the sub context and you want to create a material and you create it in the mat context. That's exactly the same thing. So just here in Solaris, you create them here in this material library, and you go inside of it. You can see it's the Bex builder. It's exactly the same as you have when you go to the mat context and create shaders there. Okay, so I'm gonna create a standard surface, which is the Arnold universal or over shader, and I'm gonna call this AI tent. So I just like to put this AI for Arnold there. You need to enable this material flag here. If not, you're not gonna be able to select it. So I'm just gonna put some color here just so we know that this is doing something. Let's just start with one. So let's go back here, and then to populate this list, you need to populate it basically. But it's very simple, because you can just click this autofill materials button here, click it, and you can see it fills this properties here. If you have a bunch of materials, it's gonna fill one for each. And you can see here in the scene graph that we have now a materials folder here or section, and there is our material that we created. And this is important because we need to have it exposed here to the scene graph so we can assign it. And to assign, we can assign the material here, but we're gonna get into this convention of not doing it here and assign it in a separate node, which is actually called assign material. And this is really useful to just separate it, because this material library could be for many shaders, and you can use this to assign to different parts in different locations. Now this assign material, let's call this, let's just tent mats. So I'm going to assign the materials to the tent here. And how you do this, it's going to be a little bit weird when you start with subs with Solaris, because you're going to want to click on this, and you're going to be searching for your components there, and most of the time they're not going to be appearing here. Also, the material pad, it just has this option here, and it's just a little bit weird sometimes. You're just not used to some of these fields not showing you that. So how you work in Solaris is just basically you drag stuff up. So if you want to assign to the tent, you grab the tent from here and assign it to the primitives. And the primitives, there's a lot of these primitives input in the nodes in Solaris. And think about this as a group in subs. You know, whenever you put whenever you drop a node in subs, there's always a group attribute, a group entry, and you apply that to that specific group. Well, think about the primitives entry here, kind of like that. You're basically targeting this, and then you do something with this and this node, right? So this is actually way more important, I guess, in Solaris to assign the primitives that are going to be affecting with this node. So in this case, we're going to affect these primitives, and we're going to assign this shader. So you can just drag it from there. And now here, it should be assigned. Well, the thing is, since the Arnold is an external renderer, it doesn't show us in the OpenGL representation here in the viewport exactly what's happening, right? When we're using something like Karma, yeah, it shows us the preview, but in this case, we're just gonna have to switch to Arnold, and now you can see it is working. Well, it's kind of working, and what's happening here, you can see it's black. It's a little bit orange here, but it's black over here. Well, the thing is, Arnold needs a light, right? Because the world right now it's totally black, and this default material is just kind of self-illuminating, I guess. What we're gonna do here is just create a dome light, and you can see another thing in Solaris that you don't have specific nodes for specific renderers. Solaris is kind of like a generic platform for all the renderers and all the implementation that you're gonna find. So you can see, even if I open this menu, you can see there's no Arnold section, there's no Redshift section, there's no Karma section. Everything in Solaris is basically like a generic platform that will work for all renderers. That is amazing, because if you learn Solaris once, you know how to use it for all the other implementations, which is great. So you can see in the light section, there's just two lights, basically a dome light and a light. And that's all you need here, because the light has different, you can change it to different things. So the dome light, you just attach it here at the end, and then you can see it works. Also, this is another thing that it's, let's say, weird about Solaris. You have to attach the nodes. If you create the light there's nothing happening. So you need to have it on the network to make it part of the scene graph, and then when it's part of the scene graph, then it affects the other objects on that scene graph, right? So when I connect it here, now the light is part of this. You can see it's on its own section, lights, dome light, and as the materials have their own section. Now that is a little bit weird, because in subs or in object you don't have to do that, but in Solaris you have to be building this scene graph with all these dependencies, and then that is when you affect your objects with that light. Also, same thing for cameras and render settings and all that stuff. So you can see now we have a material there for Arnold. We're rendering with Arnold. We can go here and we can change the color for Arnold and see it update here really quickly, because Arnold is super quick doing this kind of thing. Changes, it's just like instantly. So we're gonna put it white right now, because we're gonna assign a material, a texture. So what I'm gonna do, it's something that it's a little bit of a workaround for seeing the materials on the textures on the viewport. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create an Arnold material builder, right? So this Arnold material builder, it's gonna be called AI tent, and let's just delete this guy for now, and let's go inside. I'm gonna create the standard surface here inside. This is standard surface. I'm gonna connect the shader output to the surface. And this is basically the same setup that we had before, but since I want connect a texture, I want to connect an image, and I'm going to call this diffuse. So this diffuse is going to be connected to the color, base color input. So whenever I connect the texture here, it's going to be connected to there. So now this is now a shader that I can assign to my tent again. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put a collect node, which basically can accept different shaders, and this will be really it's a really nice way to just organize your shaders. So I'm gonna call this tent mat, this is the actual material that I'm gonna assign to this. Connect this and assign this because it just has one shader assigned. And if we go here in this material library, we should just clear this and autofill again. You can see now I had two things here. What's happening is that it's taking everything on that network that has the material flag on, and it's exposing that, but we don't want that. So what we want is we want to disable this one. We only want to expose this one. The other thing I'm gonna do right now is just gonna put a principal shader here. and this is gonna be just like this is gonna be basically like my OpenGL shader. So I'm gonna call this OpenGL, and I'm gonna connect this first. The surface output, I'm gonna connect it to the shader because the first input is gonna be what the viewport is gonna read by default, the OpenGL viewport, and then I'm gonna connect this in the second one. So now I'm also gonna turn this off because I don't want this exposed. The only one I want exposed is this one. So this is basically one shader that contains two versions, or one for OpenGL and one for Arnold. There's some interesting things that we'll do later in another course with this, so stay tuned for that. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna assign the 10th texture, which is on the library, assets, 10th textures, and it's this one, 10th fabric color. So I'm gonna collect that one, I'm gonna select that one, I'm gonna right click here and say copy parameter, and go here to the OpenGL shader, which is, I'm gonna set this to white because I don't want any color on this. Go to the texture, enable the base color, and then paste relative reference. So this means let's just see what the effect is without it, so you can understand what I'm doing here. Now we need to expose the materials, and now you can see it's only exposing that one. But now this is complaining because this doesn't exist anymore. So let's just grab the new one there. So there we go. Now we have a material. But you can see this doesn't show the texture on the viewport. Even if we go to Arnold, we know there is a texture. It should be there. And it is. You can see now we have a texture here on the fabric, but we don't see it on the viewport. And it will be nice to see in the viewport because it's great to have feedback even when we are working in OpenGL here. So go back to here and let's connect this one on the first input, and you already can see that here. So we are basically making a little workaround to prepare one shader for the OpenGL and for one shader for Arnold, basically. So that now, if we can see it in OpenGL here, Houdini GL, and if we switch to Arnold, we're gonna see the exact same. Well, a little bit better because it's render, right? All right, so from this point, you know exactly what to do with your life. If you already know Arnold, you say, okay, that's all I needed to just get started. I know how to import geometry, set shaders, and render, basically, and you're good. So let's create the other one. Let's just copy this network. We already set up this. Let's call this supports. And this is this is how I did my other scene. This is just all this, man. I did this for all the other shaders exactly the same way. So let's go here to supports. Inside this one, since this has a relative reference, we don't need to touch this. And the only thing we need to do is change this material here for the supports color. And now we only have these to enable as materials. Autofill now brings the supports. Now we have the support material here, and then we can assign it here. Number of materials, let's click the plus to add another one. Drag the supports here, drag the supports material there, and now the supports have a material as well. And we can see it on the viewport because we have that OpenGL connection there. So this is basically it for this. You can just go from this point on. You can just do whatever you need for your Arnold surface shader. It's basically the same thing here. I just added there is a roughness for this. You can see there is a fabric roughness, which you can just do it rough, and then go and connect that to specular roughness. You're not gonna see that in the viewport, but you can switch to Arnold and see what's happening. And there you go. See, it just has that roughness now. You can I also gave it another image node for bump map. Let me stop this for now. Bump 2D. Connect this to the normal input here. Make this your normal. There is was there? I think it was using the same. I was using the same color. No, the roughness as the normal for this, the bump. So it's just a little hacky there, but that's all the assets that we have there. Let's call this. You can see it's bumping the fabric there. The other thing I did is just enable subsurface scattering. Make this scale really small because this is just fabric, so it will be super small. And I connected the color to the subsurface color there. And if you make this subsurface, you can see now you can see you can see through this the fabric there, which is really cool. I think I made this a little bit smaller. You can also connect this to the radius. I mean, if you have better maps than what I have right here, you can make this look a lot better. But for me, I just connecting the diffuse to the surface and the radius just to make it hack it a little bit, and then you can see through the fabric, and it's looking really cool, like you would in reality, right? All right, so that's how you assign shaders, how you create shaders, how you assign them, and how you light this in create lights, I guess. You can also create any type of other lights. I created a sunlight. Let me just position my camera where I want it, just like the regular Houdini viewport. Just position your viewport wherever you want it. Go to here and create, let's in this case create a distant light like that. And you can see the distant light is here. If we switch to Arnold, let's disable this one, or just, you know what, yeah, let's disable this one. This distant light, I guess it's, let's go to over here, because that distant light is a little bit too low. Let's raise the exposure. You can see now we have a light that it's doing that. Raise the exposure a little bit more, that's too much. But yeah, you can see if we go under the tent, you can see how the light is going, it's passing through the tent really nicely. It looks pretty good. The power of Arnold. It's also, again, Arnold, it's pretty simple. The only thing you're going to be using for most of the time is just going to be this surface, Arnold surface, standard surface, and that's it. Arnold doesn't have like a ton of shaders and things like that. Just one shader. Okay, so that's how you create some lights. How do you assign some shaders and make some tweaks to your shaders, and assign some textures, and even create a setup to you can see it in OpenGL as well. All right, so let's move on. All right, so with the power of instant cooking, I just brought another object here, which is a table, which is, sorry, I don't mean to delete that one. See, it's just a table here, which I just imported the same way here. Just go to the table here. See, I just imported the table. Did the name attribute there, has two groups. If you go to stage or Solaris, you can see we have the table here. And now we have another way of assigning this this material library. You can see you don't have to always have it here in the same branch. You can have your material library here at the side and then just plug it to wherever you need it. You can see I have just created one shader here with just the texture there the same way. And then in the reference node here, the reference LOP, just I create a reference LOP, plug this guy in the first input, plug this guy in the multi-input, which is the second input, in the material, this reference, I just created this primitive path, put it to materials because by default it's just OS. And then you have to change the reference type to just bring it from the second input because by default it wants to load a file from this. So I just change this parameter and now it's reading from this and it's creating this reference, which basically means we're merging these two nodes or these two objects into one in this graph. So we have the table and the materials in one thing. It's basically the same as having this guy connected here, but it's a little different because this material library could be external. Maybe the material, the shading department is creating the materials and just bringing that in, right? And it will update anytime they update those. So I assign the materials here, same way, same, just use one material right now. And that's it. So how do we have two objects here? So how do we merge these two guys together? It's not the same as in subs. You don't put a merge sub here, a merge lop here. That's for another thing. So what we can do, it's we're gonna use another lop, which is called sub layer, which is it's gonna create a layer for LOPS, and you can connect this guy there, and you can connect this other object there. And now let's block the light at the bottom so we can see. Now we can see again this sub layer. It also wants to load files. You can see from here. Let's change it to inputs. So we merge the input, not the file that it's gonna try to load. And you can see now we have our two objects together, and they are here in our hierarchy here. You can see the table. It's on geometry because here we also tell it to be on geometry in the geometry of parent there. If we don't change that like that, by default you can see it's gonna be outside of it. You can see it's not under geometry, and this is gonna start become messy. So be careful with your organization and just always make sure you put your components in the right place. That like that. So there we go. There we can merge them, and they are where they need to be, and the materials are wherever they need to be as well. These materials, you can see we can have this concept of different places. You can see this geometry. If we save this tent, it will take these materials with it because it's part of the same geometry here. In the other case here, the materials are outside, which I guess would be like a global context here. It depends on what you need. It depends on what your pipeline is gonna require. Sometimes you need your materials with the object, and sometimes you might not because you're maybe adding materials after the fact. All right, I'm gonna show you another way to load assets into your network, and this will be how to load USD assets whenever you have them already. Let's say somebody else on your pipeline exported them, or you prepare those assets here and you save them into USD and you wanna instance them on your scene. You can use the stage manager. Go to just click on this little icon here. You can create a parent group. Let's call this props. Let's make this bigger because this requires a lot of screen space. Click this little icon, navigate to where you have your files, and go to the library assets. And you can see here we're going to import the ones that say asset. You can see this is our USD assets. Just drag them here and then drag it on the props. Let's bring a basket, the basket asset there, and let's bring, I don't know, one of the books, the book asset. All right, so now we can close that one, put all these guys on the props, and now we have these assets here. You can see we are not seeing the assets because we are not on that one, but see we have this. You can click on this little gizmo there to move the assets, to activate the move handle. You can have that. You can see we have those there. To merge these guys into your asset and into your graph here, you can use another sub layer if you want, like this. Sub layer there, And then again, this would need to be changed to inputs, because if not, it's gonna try to load. But now you can see we can move these guys, populate our scene, move the basket, let's say over here, and let's move the book up here. And we're gonna do one of the coolest things about USD, which is variance. And you can see this, all of these objects actually, this basket has some variance, and you can access the variance in this case over here with this little kind of dogs icon there. You can see the barrel. If you click on it, go to model, you can see there's variations there. You can have one with no lid. You can see now it's open. You can change the basket here, just change it to the basket with carpets. You can see now we have another one. So this is basically models that are inside these assets. You can think about this kind of like HDAs. You can see the book has 5 variations. So let's make just Control D here to put a little bit more books there, and just select different assets for this one. I'm gonna do something that is cool in Solaris, which is the dynamics kind of way to place assets. So let's just first just move them a little bit so they are not overlapping. Just clicking on that handle there, and then just doing that. Okay, so now you can see I can't use the physics handle from here. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put an edit LOP here at this level, and then here I can edit this. Actually, you can see I can keep editing this objects here, but there is this option up there. You can see here is use physics, and this is only in this edit sub here, edit LOP. You can enable it, and then you can see I can move this guy. It's gonna crash into other objects. Right now you can see this is kind of boring because it's just crashing with that book, but let's select this one and let's go over here. You can see, put it there, and you can see it's even detecting that little part of the table and just putting that book, just calculating the physics to put it there. You can select another book and put it on top of this one. You can see now just calculates how it would kind of rest on top of that. Let's just put the other book on top of those two, like this. And this is very cool to lay out stuff really quickly. You can see this is really fun to play with, really. It's cool. This is there you go. So you can see that would have taken a lot of time to do manually, really. And this would just be really simple to do if I wanted to have this over here instead. You can see that it's just pretty fast to do with this method. That was pretty fast, really. So yeah, that's something fun with Solaris there. All right, so to finish, I'm gonna show you a little overview of the finished scene that I made here. Specifically this character that you see here. It's from the Arnold documentation, and I wanted to see it here in Houdini. So you can see this hunter character is the character here. If you go to the object context, you can see this guy is actually an Alembic file. I'm not loading this branch here. I just loaded this branch because this is an OBJ, and I wanted to see what was the best way to bring this character. I ended up using this Alembic file here, which is really cool. I just exported this from Maya, and it has different parts on it. Really nice. I took that into Solaris, and you can see it has all the different parts here, which is really nice because I just transformed this to position it here. I created a material library. You can see I have all these materials exactly the same way I already showed you. So it's exactly the same type of setup that I make. Exactly the same setup inside. Let's say for this body here, you can see it's just exactly the same setup. I'm even using Subsurface on it. Same setup, all same stuff. I'm assigning the materials here again, selecting some parts here in this scene graph, and then assigning it to the different materials. You you can see some of these have different parts like this. And if you want to assign to different parts, you can really just drag one at a time. You will have to select them all and then drag them all together, or you can use this little arrow here. You can see I selected those chrome parts there, and if you click that arrow, you can just select whatever part you want. If I wanted to make this part chrome as well, this little canister here, you can select that as well. Press enter and it would select it. Let's say I didn't have this little ring selected, I can select it and press enter, and now that updates the selection on that part there. So there you can see here's the materials assigned. Again, we're using the trick to just see the texture here in the OpenGL viewport. If we switch to, I'm not gonna be able to see it because it's gonna be dark. Yeah, sure. But yeah, that's how we did that. The other thing is, I guess the other part that you need to know is how do we even render this outside of here? Because my first instinct would be to just go here and type Arnold, right? Let's go type Arnold, and there's nothing called Arnold. So where is my output wrap? Or okay, let's find an output wrap. Well, that's just an output node. So how do we render this thing? Well, first we will need to have here in this case I have just a sub layer here with all my lights. So this will be maybe the lighting department has all these sub layer and then gives you that layer in a USD file, and you just bring it here. And in this case we just have 3 lights there, and then after that, well, we need a camera, right? Because if we don't have a camera, how do we render? So we just create a camera node there, and you can see I have now a camera. You can select there. It works exactly the same as in other Houdini contexts. You lock the camera here and you can move it, you can rotate it, you can position your camera in that way, same way as other in the regular scene view. The other thing that might catch you, or the gotcha, is that you can go here and say, well, where's my resolution? I want to set my 2K, 1K resolution, and you can see there's nothing here. I just changed the focal length here to make it a little bit smaller. I mean, a little bit more, give it more perspective, and then, but there's no resolution here. So where is that? Well, for that you need the render settings, and the render settings is all your there's all your Arnold render settings there, and your resolution. You can see the resolution is here. Just have some testing resolution there. You can set this to whatever resolution you need, the camera you're going to render with, and in the Arnold section here you have all your Arnold properties, just like you have in the Arnold wrap in Houdini or in any other application. This is the properties for Arnold. Just make sure to just enable it. By default, these guys are all disabled. If you want to enable the SSS setting, you can set or create, and then just set the parameter here. There's all the parameters here, all the parameters you are used to in Arnold. They are all exposed here. The other thing is here to actually just render, because here you don't have a render button. So to render, as I mentioned, Solaris is like a generic platform for all renderers, right? So to render, you need to create the USD render wrap here. So the USD render wrap, you can see I created there. I'm gonna plug this because I already have one. You can see this is your regular render interface, and then to render with Arnold, you just select it here from the renderer drop down here. You can see I have 3 of them here. And this is, again, because this platform is really meant to be generalized, or it's a generic platform for more renderers. If you switch all this setup for RenderMan and you have RenderMan here, you can just switch to RenderMan here and just go ahead and render. There's not much stuff to set up here. The only things that you can set up here is you can set your render settings, which you don't have to really if this is on the network already. But if you want to feel safe, just do it there. And then you can set your output image here to when you want to save your image if you want to render to this. So instead of just rendering here in the viewport like we've been doing all this time, you can now just go here, click render to template or render to disk, and then your image will render to disk. If you need to render an animation, you can just change this to the specific range. Standard Houdini procedures now here. It's just gonna be setting your Arnold parameters, how you need them, the output, the camera size, your resolution, and then you will hit render, and that would give you your final image. All right, just to do a quick summary of what we learned today. So we learned how to just bring your geometry regularly, like you always do in Houdini. Just bring it to your sub context, and then how you add names to your object. Well, in this case of the Olympic doesn't need them, but something like the tent needs some names. Well, in this case I did it manually, but something like this table, I just have this name from group, so you can create your group, so you can manipulate it in Solaris. Then to bring it into Solaris, you use the sub import node. No matter what kind of geometry it is, if it's already imported into subs, Solaris will read it and will actually convert it to USD. So this is already, you are, at the moment it's here in Solaris, you are working in USD all the time. So you learn also how to create a material library, how to make a little workaround here for showing the textures on the viewport, how to create Arnold materials and assign them here. This is something that I didn't show you before, but this is how you will set your geometry settings. If you want to render with subdivisions, for example, you put the render the geometry settings node, and then you enable subdivision here, because since we are not in object mode, we need to set it here. Basically, you can see this is kind of like the object icon level, so you can set your subdivisions at this level here. And then you will learn how to merge different parts of your layout here, of your scene graph. Here in this part, we learn how to use the stage manager to bring different assets and just populate the scene with them and move them and organize them, and use the variants as well. Then we also learn how to add lights, how to add cameras, render settings, and finally render our final image to either to template or directly to your hard drive. And that's all you need to get started with Solaris. I mean, it's not that scary. There's a little bit of new concepts and things that you need to understand, but I will say start using it, start playing with it, read the documentation, and you will get there. It's really good once you get the hang of it. All right, and that's it for my presentation. I would like to thank Side Effects for inviting me to talk, Arnold for all the support they have given me during the making of this presentation, and thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed this presentation and you are excited about playing with Solaris and Arnold. All right, let's keep learning together, guys. I will see you next time. Hasta la vista, baby.